Welcome to the chalkboard, my fellow football nerds, for episode number 241 of Chalk Talk. I'm your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL, and I'm joined today by the best co-host in the game. It is Mr. Fantasy Football himself. It's Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. Mark, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. I have a little bit of a disaster scenario for my fantasy football situation.
No.
Had my two biggest drafts scheduled for this weekend coming up on Friday and Sunday. The one Friday draft, a bunch of availabilities changed. People asked if we could shift it. The only time we could shift it to was also that Sunday. So I have one draft at 4 on Sunday, followed by my other biggest draft at 6:30. So I pretty much like the 5 most important hours of my fantasy football season happening from 4 to 9 o'clock on Sunday. Don't text, don't call from 4 to 9.
All right. Well, I need to steal your fantasy football guides because my son's draft is on Saturday, and I don't know how that's going to go, but we'll see. He's excited about it.
I do this every year around August. This is a free ad, but I get the Fantasy Pros draft subscription. I don't know. It's like $5 a month. I get it for 1 month, and you can customize cheat sheets on there. So I have a cheat sheet that I'm currently pretty close to finished with. I'll have it done tonight or tomorrow. So I'll send that over to you, and I'm going to tweet it out as well for the people that have their fantasy drafts coming up this week. I'll probably only tweet out the positional chart because I think everybody's, when it comes to overall ranks, it's so dependent on situation and your format, how many guys you're starting, how many flexes, a lot of different reasons that the overalls could be vastly different. And that could change some of the positional rankings as well. But for the most part, the positional rankings are a little less fluid. So I'll probably tweet that out. I'll send you both.
Nice. I look forward to it. He's done a lot of thought into who he wants his first round pick to be.
What do you know what pick he has, or is it random?
No, we're gonna spin for it right before the draft starts. So, which I told him, I was like, best player doesn't necessarily mean best fantasy player. So he's aware of that going in, and he's eyeing. He would like to walk out of the first round with Jahmyr Gibbs or Jamar Chase. And I was like, that's a solid. If you walk out with one of those guys, you probably did all right.
Those are my top 2 overall players. Jahmyr Gibbs, easily number 1. A little fantasy tidbit for the people out there. I think it's normalized now where he's going number 1 pretty much everywhere. But there earlier on in the fantasy draft season, there was kind of a debate between him and Jamar, him and even Bijan probably a little bit more, where people would give the nod to Bijan. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is winning Offensive Player of the Year this year. Well, Shane and I, when do we have our draft with the awards? And we have to figure out when that is. But hopefully I get OPOY number 1 pick, or else I just gave away who I'm taking to Shane.
Yeah, it should be this week is the NFC AFC South, and then next week should be NFC AFC West, which will wrap our divisional previews. And then that following week, we should do our award draft on Monday, and then Thursday is the kickoff game. So we've got it timed out pretty well. We will be able to stick that one in.
Yeah, that works out well. Yeah, it's always one of my favorites of the year.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, we are going to dive into our NFC and AFC South previews. If you have missed the first couple, maybe you're just coming back to the podcast feed after the offseason, we have previewed the NFC and AFC East 2 episodes ago, episode 239. We previewed the Norths in 240. Obviously, a little bit of dated information in some of those with some things that have been announced since then, but still a good overview to go and check out. And today we're going to be doing that for probably the least interesting set of divisions in the NFC and AFC South before we really finish with the powerhouses in the West next week. So we're going to dive in here. Let's start with the Atlanta Falcons, who go 8-9 last year. And they end up 3rd in the NFC South based off of tiebreakers. They miss the playoffs for the 8th straight season. And then in the offseason, they lose Kirk Cousins. They lose running back Tyler Algier. They lose Darnell Mooney, Caleb McGarry, Leonard Floyd, Arnold Ebiketie. How do you say his name? I need a ruling, Mark. He's on the Eagles now. I got to know how to say his last name.
I'm going to look up the official pronunciation guide here because I don't want to lead it astray. I'm pretty sure Ebiketie.
Ebiketie?
Let me look it up.
Okay. Well, they lose him.
Ebbuhkaytee is the pronunciation. Show
Ebiketie.
Ebiketie, yeah.
Okay, now I know. Now you know, Eagles fans. They also lose Caden Ellis. They bring in Kevin Stefanski as the head coach, replacing Raheem Morris, who they fired. They bring in Tommy Rees to be the OC. Tua is their quarterback now, maybe. Jawan Taylor and some other guys. Sidney Brown joins from the Eagles. But questions and storylines for them as they head into camp, I think, or head into the regular season. You get Michael Penix Jr. versus Tua, the two lefties. I remember when Penix was coming out, I was saying, like, he just needs to go to Miami, so they've got a backup left-handed quarterback. Well, they may be in that situation now, but who wins the starting job? Does it even matter? Can either one of them really do enough to get this team to the playoffs? They have a really talented skill position group. I mean, it's crazy that Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts, they just can't make the playoffs with them. And so can Kevin Stefanski get more out of them? The Falcons have gone under their win total in 3 straight seasons, despite having a fairly easy schedule. And so that's why you get the new staff this year. This year they have the 19th easiest schedule, so it's not as easy as it's been in the past. They rank 9th in rest differential at plus 7 days, and their over-under win total is at 6.5. So, Mark, what are your thoughts on the Falcons this year?
So I know that there is a 7.5 out there. So there are 7.5s out there for the Falcons, because I'm in a group chat of people that have slammed that under on 7.5, and I agree with that. I think that this Falcons team has real disaster potential. You look at the quarterback room, and I watched some cut-ups of Penix last year, and while I'm a Tua hater, it's like quite clear to me that Tua is their best chance at quarterback, which is saying a lot. And I'm a little bit on Stefanski fraud watch a little bit. He's had a lot of credit for his good seasons, not a lot of blame at all for his bad seasons. And the defenders are going to say, like, oh, well, Deshaun Watson's terrible. He obviously is. I agree with that. But at a certain point, you have to ding him for A, wanting Deshaun Watson, B, continuing to play Deshaun Watson, and then C, not at any point making Deshaun Watson look anything other than the absolute worst player in football. And I'm not saying that that's his fault that Deshaun Watson sucks, but like at a certain point when it's such a long run of him being the worst player while you're the head coach. I know that Joe Flacco came in and played well, and like I know that there's been moments. You look at Baker, his best moments came not under Stefanski as well. His best moments have come in Tampa under different OCs, like the year with Canales or the year with Liam Cohen. We've now seen multiple examples, in my opinion, that I don't know if Stefanski elevates quarterbacks. And I got some crap for that, but from Alex Insdorf, who we had on the show, Chargers writer, who's a bit of a Stefanski defender. Maybe he proves me wrong in Atlanta. I think he made a bad choice going to Atlanta also. If you're Stefanski, and he was up for a bunch of jobs, and I think you would have been better off taking either a high OC job and kind of getting back in the market next year, or just taking a year off, do some media or whatever the case may be. I think this was a bad choice to go to Atlanta, but he has a lot of, media. He gets a lot of media credit, Stefanski. So I feel like even if he flames out in Atlanta, he probably has a future going forward after that. But too early for me to say that. Like you said, Bijan, London, Pitts, really good skill position guys. I'm concerned about pretty much everything else. The quarterback, the O-line, the defense without Raheem Morris. I know that they kept Jeff Ulbricht, but I do think Raheem Morris was probably a pretty important part of that defense, overperforming to a bit last year. I love Xavier Watts. Some of the young guys that they have are pretty good. But Jalen Walker out for the year. James Pierce, I don't even know what's going on with him. If he's getting suspended or I don't. He shouldn't be in the NFL. But whatever happens with him, I don't think he's going to be playing. I think he's suspended at least for some of the season. So
8 games.
8 games. Yeah. 8
I was
games
going to say, I think it was like half the year.
Yeah. So I didn't know if it was announced yet or if it was like being speculated. There's a lot of problems on that defense, a lot of problems on that O-line, and then one of the worst quarterback rooms in football, unequivocally there.
Yeah. So
under.
Yeah, I think they're going to be a pretty bad football team as well. I'm with you there.
I have them at 5-12, and I had them when I did my power rankings. I had them, 26 out of 32.
Yeah. All right, well, let's go to the division winners from last year by way of that three-way tiebreaker. The Carolina Panthers, who also went 8-9. They get their first division title since 2015 and then lose in the NFC wildcard to the Rams. They trade Andy Dalton this offseason to the Eagles for a 7th-round pick, which, based on what we've seen so far in the preseason, Howie Roseman got fleeced, giving up a 7th-round pick for that guy. They lose Cade Mays and Austin Corbett off the offensive line, Rico Dowdle, and then Ashawn Robinson and DJ Wanham off the defensive line. They go get Devin Lloyd, who leaves Jacksonville. Big signing. They get Jalen Phillips, pay him top edge rusher money, which is also a big signing. And then they get Rasheed Walker, John Mechie, Kenny Pickett. They spent a 1st-round pick on Monroe Freeling. Bryce Young's entering year 3 with Dave Canales, and it's put up or shut up time. Like, the question is, can he take a leap from looking like a franchise quarterback in small stretches to looking like one for an extended period of a season? So the Panthers picked up his 5th-year option, so he's under contract for next season. But it's time to show that he can be the guy, or I have to imagine the Panthers are going to be looking to make other moves when they get into this offseason. And that might be tough for him because both of his starting tackles, Ike Ekwonu and Taylor Moton, are hurt, and they could miss real time. Ekwonu's coming off a torn patellar tendon. Taylor Moton has blood clots in his lungs, I think it was. So both of those guys are going to miss the start of the season at least. I think Ekwonu's injury was late December, if I recall correctly. So he's probably going to miss half the season. It's really up in the air for that offensive line. And then on the defense, well, so it's Monroe Freeling, 1st-round pick. Like, you're going to have to come in and play well. Rasheed Walker, it's going to test those guys early. And then on the defense, they have invested heavily 2 years in a row in free agency. And so can it carry them? They have the 30th easiest schedule, or another way you could say that is the 3rd hardest, but for consistency, 30th easiest schedule. They are tied for 6th in rest differential at +8, and their over-under win total is at 7.5. What are your thoughts on the Panthers, Mark?
I'm going over. It's a very slight over. I have them at 8-9. It would not surprise me if this Panthers team wins 9 or 10 games, though, and is just very slightly better than they were last year. The reason that I can't fully get there is just a combination of Bryce Young. I have a lot of problems with Bryce Young. I think that it's over. I wish that they would have went out and got a legitimate backup option to at least push him, or if things go bad, you have someone to go to. And then even more curious, I love their offseason, actually. Like, we can go through a lot of the moves, and I really love a lot of the moves. I love a lot of the players they added. Love even some of the moves they made in the draft. Monroe Freeling was, I think, a great pick, offensive tackle. Bit of a, maybe not a project, but I think an upside swing with Freeling. Bit of a raw guy, but they're going to need him to play right away. And then Lee Hunter, a guy at deep tackle who I really liked, and they can add him to Derek Brown there inside, and I think can create a really interesting defensive line there. But a really curious thing, and I'm not someone who loves, like paying running backs or anything like that, but I thought Rico Dowdle was really solid for them for stretches last year, and he went and did not get big money from Pittsburgh, but he went to Pittsburgh, and he's going to play a similar role, splitting the carries with Jalen Warren there, kind of the Chuba Hubbard there to his Rico Dowdle. And they didn't really replace him. They're relying on Jonathan Brooks, a guy who they drafted a couple years ago, who has not played in the NFL because he's been so hurt. Yeah. People are raving about him in training camp. I think that's a lot of trust to put in a guy who you haven't seen do it. And Chuba Hubbard was really inefficient last year, if you look at some of the metrics behind him. So I don't really, if I was going to be in on this Carolina team with Bryce Young, it would take me feeling a little better about the running game. But I think they have one of the worst running RB rooms in football. Having said all that, I think this defense has the chance with Ejiro Evero, one of the better D coordinators in the sport. I think they really could be one of the better, top 5-7 defenses in football. You look all over the defense. I just talked about the inside with Derek Brown and Hunter, who they just drafted, but Jalen Phillips, who they just paid. And did they overpay Jalen Phillips? Probably. But if he plays, no, they didn't. They overpaid him because you have the concerns about his health. He's healthy. I think you're fine. I think that's a fine contract. And Nick Scorton, who I think got hurt, right? Nick Scorton.
I think he did. Yeah.
I think he got hurt. So that hurts that defense for sure. But I think one of the better contract values of the offseason was Devin Lloyd. And that's kind of spurned me. Some of the linebacker values of the last couple of years, especially Devin Lloyd, spurred me to say, I don't know if I want to draft linebackers anymore. Because if we can go out and pay a Devin Lloyd what he got, I think that might be the route to take at linebacker, especially since you see so many linebackers year to year pop, on day 3 or day 2. I kind of think that's where I'm at a little bit at that position. And then corner J.C. Horn, if he plays, Mike Jackson, they have a couple other guys. They drafted Will Lee. I think that this defense has the potential to be really, really good. And to the O-line concerns, I'm actually slightly less concerned about that. I think they had one of the more deep O-lines because they signed Rasheed Walker to one of the more puzzling contracts this offseason. People thought he was going to get like $100 million and he got like 1 year, $10 million. And people think it's some injury stuff or, there's some off the field stuff potentially, but he's going to step in and play for them. And he played, 1,100 snaps for Green Bay last year. So he is a guy who was able to play on a good O-line last year. And then, like I said earlier, they have Monroe Freeling slotting in their first round pick at the other tackle. So they didn't want those guys to play right away. But here they are, and at least they had those options because I think they probably had one of the better kind of third and fourth tackle options in the sport.
Yeah.
But then if one of those guys goes down, they're done.
Yeah, then you're basically becoming the Chargers offensive line at that point.
It's unbelievable. Thank God that it happened before we did the AFC West preview where both of us talked about how they were going to win the AFC and go to the Super Bowl. It's just Chargers going to Charger.
Yeah. So, all right, let's keep going. New Orleans Saints go 6-11 last season. They miss the playoffs. They lose Demario Davis, Taysom Hill, Luke Fortnier, Alante Taylor, and Michael Davis. They get Travis Etienne, Caden Ellis, Noah Fant, Tyree Wilson, Martin Emerson Jr., and then they spend their first round pick on Jordan Tyson. I think there's 2 questions or storylines for this team. One is Tyler Shuck. Saints were laughed at for picking him. Then he took over for a struggling Spencer Rattler at 1-7 and goes 5-4 down the stretch. And so is he going to be the long-term answer at quarterback? He's certainly walking in as the starter this year. But then the other question is injuries. Man, this team has been decimated. They bring Alvin Kamara back for a reduced role at age 31, but he suffers an MCL sprain in joint practices. So how long until he returns? How is he going to share carries with ETN? Jordan Tyson's dealing with a hamstring injury that could reportedly cause him to miss the first 2 months of the season. Second-year defensive tackle Brian Bresee is out for the season with a torn ACL, which is a big blow to their interior defensive line. So they are already injured. You wonder with a guy like Jordan Tyson, so much of making the leap to the NFL is adjusting to the pace of play, the speed. And when you're going to miss 2 months, you're trying to learn. Your week 1 is mid-season. Like, does that just kind of make the second half of the season for you not go very well? How do you come off of that? Like, it's probably going to be a disappointing year from him. They do have an easy schedule, 3rd easiest schedule in the league. However, they rank 28th in rest differential at -7 days relative to their opponents. Their over-under win totals at 7.5. Mark, talk to me about the Saints.
I'm all in on the Saints. I'm all in on them winning this division. I'm in the process of adjusting some wins. I had my initial run through and I had them at 9-8 winning the division, but I'm starting to feel I was ranking. This is maybe something fun we could add to our draft. Maybe a fun exercise we could do, but I was ranking I ranked my division winners in order of my confidence in them winning their division. I think the Saints are higher on that list than I thought before I did the exercise. I'm starting to feel like there's a better chance the Saints are the surprise team of the year and they pop and win 11 or 12 games than they win 6 or 7 games. I have them at 9. I might end up bumping them to 10, but I think they have, I see the case for I'm being too low on them more than I see the case for that I'm too high on them. I love Kellen Moore. I think the way that they closed with Shuck last year, I think that's real. a 5-4 run. I know that there's media types out there that love Spencer Rattler, but Tyler Shuck came in 69.2% completion percentage in his starts. He threw 251 yards per game. If you look at if you would have prorated his stats over a full season in his starts, he would have had 4,261 yards and 19 touchdowns. And that's not a lot of touchdowns, actually, but 4,261 yards is pretty darn impressive. And I really, really loved that's a good number, that yard number. And there's some under the hood numbers that are pretty nice with Shuck. But he's one of those guys where I bet the Saints a bunch in meaningless games at the end of last year, and I was watching meaningless Saints games, and I was just so impressed. This was not a guy I was in on in the draft process, and for a lot of the reasons Shane mentioned. And I think the injury stuff with Shuck led me to not even really open my mind up to the possibilities of, the on-field stuff. I think I was just kind of like, this guy, get him out of here. He's been so hurt. He's so old. I don't even really need to evaluate him that closely. I also thought he was a bit of a Brom merchant. Jeff Brom at Louisville, great coach, great offensive mind. And then last year, replacing Tyler Shuck, Miller Moss steps in and was horrible. So it was a little bit of a combo. You lose Shuck and he goes to the NFL and plays amazing. And also the system that I thought he was a little bit of a system merchant in college turned out to not be that great once he left. So I'm shucked up. I'm all in on Shuck right now. And also, I'm not going to tell you Brandon Staley is a great coach. He got a lot out of that Saints defense last year, and they added a couple pieces here and there on it. So I think that the Saints defense just has to be average. I really do think the Saints offense could be pretty good. Travis Etienne, really good ad. Obviously, Jordan Tyson banged up. We'll see when he comes back. But a sneaky guy, if you look at his numbers with Tyler Shuck, Jawan Johnson, their tight end. He's a deep, I have him as my tight end 10 in fantasy this year, actually. If you're someone who maybe you don't want to take the first couple tight ends, Jawan Johnson, really, really good weight on tight end option in the 11th or 12th round, something, maybe 10th. I don't know exactly where he's going, but somewhere in that range, he has that top 5 tight end upside. I think there's some numbers out there that with Shuck, he was a top 4 tight end down the stretch in targets and yards and a bunch of these stats. So and pretty good O-line for New Orleans as well. So I really, really think that there's a lot to be excited about with that Saints offense.
Yeah. All right. Let's go on to the last team in the division. It is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who started 6-2 last year and managed to lose the division from that position, going 8-9, losing that tiebreaker. They had a streak of 4 straight NFC South titles, and that comes to an end. They lose Mike Evans in the offseason. He goes to San Francisco, and the substation immediately claims him. Levante David retires. Jamel Dean signed with the Steelers. They lose Rashad White. They bring in Alex Anzalone, Ashawn Robinson, Kenny Gainwell, Reuben Bain Jr. is their first-round pick. I think, you look at this team and questions about Baker Mayfield. Can he stay healthy? Can he recapture his early season MVP level form from last year? Is that sustainable? Losing Mike Evans and Levante David, I think, is a big deal. Those were 2 career Buccaneers, one on each side of the ball. So who steps into those leadership and production roles? And then you had the Vita Vea situation where he requested a trade, but then he has since signed a 1-year, $30 million contract that puts him in Tampa for this season and next. And so he got the payday. We'll see what that translates to on the field. But they have the 25th, easiest schedule. For rest differential, they're tied at 18th at -2 days relative to their opponents, and their over-under win total is at 8.5.
Under. One of my favorite unders on the board. I think Todd Bowles, this Tampa defense in general, is a dead defense, dead coach walking. I think it's an under-kept secret. I don't think I said that right, but it's a well-kept secret that I think Todd Bowles is a little washed as a defensive coach. And these defenses have not, and part of that's personnel. But these defenses have not been quite the same over these past couple years. And then the Baker thing, I'm a little bit over the Baker thing. It's just, he either, plays really well or he's injured and is playing poorly. And then he's injured. So it's at a certain point, it's hard for me to factor in injury with a lot of guys. Like, people are always doing Joe Burrow can't stay healthy. Dak gets hurt a lot. Lamar can't stay healthy, whoever that is. That I'm almost more willing to overlook when guys miss time. The Baker thing is almost a bigger problem to me, where he won't come out. He's just going to keep playing, and there's nothing you can do about it because he's going to stink when he's hurt. And he's so small that when he takes hits, he's probably going to get hurt. And he's also kind of swashbuckling and gunslinging, and he's going to take those hits because he's going to put himself in those situations where he's going to hold onto the ball and have confidence that he's going to get the ball off while he gets hit, or he's going to run for a first down and get smoked at the first down marker and stand up and celebrate it and yell at the guy. And I love some of that stuff. We love it on this podcast. We are big Baker guys, but at a certain point, the fact that I think it's like half of the years that he's played in the NFL, you could say oh, well, he was hurt. And it's well, he played. At a certain point, I almost think that's a bigger deal. But I think a lot of this more has to do with personnel. It just feels like this is the end of an era in Tampa, and Baker's contract is coming up. I almost think I could see him being a bit of a free agent this offseason, and kind of it being an interesting conversation of if he's still valuable and how many teams still want him. And Tampa kind of reloading and rebuilding. I think it's going to be a new coach in Tampa. There are a lot of old guys that already started getting phased out this year, but even still a lot of old guys there. I think it's going to be time for a regime change a little.
Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy watching Baker play, but yeah, it's the staying healthy thing is always going to be an issue for him. But the beginning of last season with all of the come from behind victories at the beginning of the year was a lot of fun. Ultimately, you struggle to see him as a guy that's ever going to be able to go the distance, though, for the exact reasons you laid out.
And Egbuka, really obviously good play, their best receiver now without Evans there, already dealing with some, I think, potential turf toe stuff, which, that stuff can linger throughout a whole season. So we'll see what happens there, but that's not great for Tampa, a team that went from having too many receivers to all of a sudden not having enough.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of teams that have receiver issues, let's go to the Houston Texans.
Did you see the news?
No.
They just traded for Kayshon Boutte about 5 minutes ago.
Well, there you go. So yeah, we'll get to that. So breaking news on the pod. You see, I was hurt, so I'm not podcasting as well as I normally do. So, I'm a small guy. You just take the hits, and I'm not coming out of this chair though. So the Texans go 12-5 last season. They finish second in the AFC South. They win the wild card matchup with the Steelers. Then they lose the divisional round to the Patriots. They don't really lose a lot this offseason. Jimmy Ward at safety. They go get Wyatt Teller and Evan Brown for the interior O-line. They acquire David Montgomery. They sign Reed Blankenship, who the Eagles should have never let out of the building. But questions and storylines for them. CJ Stroud looked like the next big thing after a rookie season, and he has regressed in 2 straight seasons. And ultimately, the lasting impression is he throws 4 interceptions in a playoff loss to the Patriots last season. Now, the Texans picked up his 5th-year option, so he's under contract for this year and next. But I think it's fair to say that his future is in question if he doesn't bounce back this year, which brings us to the receiver issues. Jaden Higgins tore his ACL. Jalen Noel is dealing with a hamstring injury. Tank Dell is coming off of a major injury in late December where he dislocated his kneecap and tore his ACL, MCL, LCL, and his meniscus, which was a career-threatening thing that he's trying to work back from. So there's major question marks about the receiver group. You just said they got Kayshon Boutte for, was it a 2nd-round pick?
No.
What'd you say it was? Or has it been announced?
Let's see.
If weight loss has felt like a losing battle, this summer can be different. Skip the guesswork and try Weight Loss by Hims. Access an affordable range of FDA-approved GLP-1 medications, including the Wegovy pill and the Wegovy pen, plus the support to actually stick with it. With Wegovy at Hims, lose up to 20% of your body weight when combined with diet and exercise. It helps you regulate your appetite, eat less, and keep weight off. Plus, Wegovy is the first ever GLP-1 pill for weight loss, so there are no needles needed. Through Hims, everything happens online. You'll connect with a licensed provider who will determine if treatment is right for you. If prescribed, your medication is delivered right to your door. No insurance necessary. Ready to reach your goals? Visit hims.com/FFSN to get a personalized, affordable plan that gets you. That's HIMS.com/FFSN. hims.com/FFSN. Weight Loss by Hims is not available in all 50 states. Wegovy is the registered trademark of Novo Nordisk AS. To get started and learn more, including important safety information, Wegovy clinical study information, and restrictions, visit hims.com.
Something big is coming. On September 2nd, DraftKings Game Day arrives with massive deals, exclusive offers, and an all-day celebration built for sports fans. The countdown has begun, and all roads lead to Game Day. So whatever your favorite sport is, DraftKings has you covered. So get ready to celebrate a new season as new DraftKings customers get $200 in bonus bets when they sign up with code PINPULL and spend $5 within 21 days. That's code PIN, P-I-N, PULL, P-U-L-L. In partnership with DraftKings, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 plus. Pennsylvania only. Eligibility restrictions apply. $50 in non-withdrawable bonus bets issued every 7 days via click-to-claim for 21 days. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Limited time offer. I've never been a nicotine user, but I'm always looking for ways to improve my focus and my energy, especially when I'm working out or I have a lot of work to get done. And I don't always want to rely on caffeine to help me get there. That's why I've been using Ultra pouches. They're 100% nicotine and caffeine free, but they still give me a noticeable boost in focus and energy without that jittery feeling or a later crash. So I'll pop one in 5 minutes before a workout or when I'm sitting down to grind film study and I really need to lock in. And I love that I get that energy boost without the cup of coffee in my hand. My favorite flavor so far is the Cool Mint, but it comes in multiple flavors: watermelon, citrus, blue raz. If you want to try them, new customers can use the code PIN, that's P-I-N, and get 15% off at takeultra.com. That's takeultra.com, code P-I-N. And when they ask where you heard about Ultra, please tell them the Eagles Pinpull Network sent you.
Before the season even kicks off, everyone's making predictions. Who wins the division? Who makes the playoffs? Who's lifting the trophy at season's end? On Kalshi, America's #1 prediction market platform, you can trade those predictions in a live market. For instance, can the Pittsburgh Steelers win at least 9 games this season? If the Steelers do, they're currently trading at 45% probability. A $100 trade pays out over $200 if the Steelers reach just 9 wins. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. Trade the draft pick, the game, and more on Kalshi. Download the Kalshi app and use code FFSN to get up to $500 in bonus credits when you trade $25. Kalshi. Kalshi. Trade on anything.
A draft pick. No, it'll be nothing. The Patriots were done with him.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say a second sounded high, but I would like to have him on my team if I was the Texans. Yeah. And then you've got the O-line. The O-line's been bad for years. Just bringing in Wyatt Teller and Evan Brown help a lot on the interior there. And then on the defensive side, I mean, Houston will go as far as their defense takes them. Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter combined for 27 sacks last year. Is the defense going to be able to replicate that production this year and carry an offense that might need it? So they have the 22nd easiest schedule. They're tied for 6th in rest differential at +8 days. Their over-under win totals at 9.5. Mark, how do you feel about the Texans?
I'm going over. I don't have a lot to say about the Texans because I think this is the same team that we've talked about for the last 2 years, especially last year. Obviously, the sophomore slump for Stroud, but I just think this is the same team. They have the same problems. It's the O-line. Will C.J. Stroud be the C.J. Stroud of a couple years ago, or will he be the C.J. Stroud of recent? Will the running game stink? David Montgomery, I like the ad, but you know, if you told me he goes there and he's averaging 3.9 yards per carry because the O-line stinks, am I going to be surprised if the run game still doesn't work? No, not really. Allegedly, they're going to be trying a lot more 12 personnel and just playing a lot more tight ends in general. We'll see. Maybe that helps with some of the protection stuff, some of the run the ball stuff. They did lose Jaden Higgins, which stinks for them. Tank Dell is not going to be ready, I don't think, for the start of the season. So a little weak at wide receiver, but Nico Collins is awesome. The defense is awesome. D'Amico Ryan's really good defensive coach. I think they're probably going to win 11 games and kind of be the same team.
Yeah. All right. Well, in that case, let's keep rolling and let's go.
I will say I've been surprised how much I've heard them as a Super Bowl pick.
Yeah, there's no chance I would pick them as a Super Bowl team with Stroud at quarterback.
That's where I'm at too.
Yeah.
He needs to show it.
Yep. All right, let's go to Indianapolis, who went 8-9 last year. It was their second straight year at 8-9. And they started the year 8-2 and then lose 7 straight to end the season. Of course, there was a quarterback injury in there, but they were unable to rebound. They lose Michael Pittman Jr. this offseason. They traded him. They lose offensive tackle Braden Smith, linebacker Zaire Franklin. They lose Kenny Moore. Phillip Rivers, they lose Phillip Rivers. Bye-bye safety net. They go out and they add cornerback Cam Taylor-Britt, edge rusher Arden Key, wide receiver Nick Westbrook-Akini, and C.J. Allen at linebacker was their second-round pick. So they didn't have a first-round pick because they traded 2 first-round picks for Sauce Gardner mid-season. And then he got hurt 4 games into his Colts career. So can he stay healthy and be the shutdown corner that they dramatically overpaid for? And then Daniel Jones tore his Achilles during that collapse, but he got a 2-year deal. And so can he be the long-term answer for this franchise? Chris Ballard is still chasing the franchise's first division title in a decade. He's still chasing quarterback, a position that he has never been able to address. And so we'll see what happens this year. They have the 9th easiest strength of schedule. Their rest differential is tied for 24th at -6 days, and their over-under win total is at 7.5. Mark, talk to me about the Colts.
This is, if I were to rank, like, here's my 32 overs and unders, and here's my most confident all the way to my least confident. This might be like 32nd least confident on how my opinion on this team. I think I've said this on this podcast about this team before. I don't know when it came up or what we were talking about. Maybe the quarterback pod with Daniel Jones. I think they might have the widest range of outcomes in the NFL. I know I said that about the Vikings too. They might have a wide range of outcomes. I think the Colts is really wide. They obviously had that run last year that you look at and you can buy into. You say, oh, Shane Steichen's an awesome offensive coach. Jonathan Taylor is one of the best running backs in the sport. They have a good offensive line. And, Lou Anarumo cooking up some madness on the defensive side of the ball. It can be average and they won a bunch of games. But then on the flip side, you can absolutely see the opposite. You can absolutely see the case for this being kind of a disaster team that wins 5 games and kind of can't figure it out. It's going to be really interesting how this team performs this year. I have them at 7-10. Obviously, so much of it comes down to Daniel Jones. And I do think so much of the Daniel Jones package working is dependent on, if not running, at least the threat to run. And if he can't run, and if he can't give them the threat to run, I think they have to go to Riley Leonard at some point this year just to get someone out there who can move. Because if Daniel Jones can't move, it's going to be a real problem. He absolutely needs the ability to be able to move. And if you're the Colts, you can't mess around and, do the thing where, we're going to try to not run him to keep him healthy, because the only value of having him is part of him running. So that's kind of the flip side of the Daniel Jones thing that I think is an interesting catch-22 there. I have a hard time predicting Shane Steichen to have a team have the bottom fall out. I think he's that good of a coach, even though he hasn't had the 10-win seasons. I think we both feel with what he's done with what he's been given has been incredibly impressive. And I am betting on that guy because I think he's probably going to get fired this year. I think they're probably going to win 7 or 8 games, even though I do think, like I said, I think there's the upside to win 11 or 12, and I think there's the downside to win 5. But I think he probably ends up fired after this year. And if he ends up a coordinator somewhere, if he ends up a head coach somewhere, I would bet on him 100 times out of 100 for the next stop to be a success, because that guy's awesome.
Yeah, he's going to get fired, and Chris Ballard is going to continue to stay and not provide an answer at quarterback for the next guy who will also get fired. But yeah, I mean, although to be fair, the bottom did kind of fall out last year. They lose that last 7 games in a row, but they were talking Phillip Rivers out of retirement to come play football. That's how dire the quarterback situation was. So Okay, let's go to Jacksonville, where the Jaguars went 13-4 last season, closing the year on an 8-game win streak before they lose to the Bills 24-27 on Wild Card Weekend. They lose Travis Etienne and Devin Lloyd, and then they go out and they get Chris Rodriguez, who's really their only outside free agent signing. They traded for Rook Orojo from the Falcons, but I mean, how did this team get better? Their only free agent signing was a running back to replace the one they lost. They didn't have a first-round pick because they traded it in a massive overpay for Travis Hunter, thinking he could revolutionize the game as a two-way player before he spent most of his rookie year hurt. And so this team didn't get better this offseason. They finished really well last year, but they didn't improve. Trevor Lawrence finished 2025 red hot. The real question is, can he carry that into a full season under Liam Cohen? It was a little bit of a slow start, which can be expected with a new coach. If they can pick up where they left off, a lot of the rest of it probably doesn't matter. But this is a team that didn't do anything this offseason, so there's not a ton, honestly, to say about them from my perspective. They have the 18th easiest schedule. They're tied for 21st in rest differential at -3 days, and their over-under win total is at 8.5. What are your thoughts on the Jags, Mark?
I guess my question is, has there ever been a 13-win team that has felt quieter than last year's Jaguars team? I wonder, I think if you asked most NFL fans, what did the Jags go last year? I think they'd say 11-6, right?
It surprised me when I looked it up that they won 13 because I was like, man, I don't remember that.
Yeah, I remember I heard it. I don't know when I heard it, but I heard it at some point earlier in the year, and I was like, what? They went 13-4 because they lost in the wild card weekend. So you think of that and you're like, oh, there's no way they won 13 games. But yeah, they were the 3 seed and they got a brutal first round matchup of the Bills. But you look at Trevor Lawrence down the stretch, the last 12 games of the year, they go 9-3. I should probably have even gotten rid of the game before that because they lost the game in Seattle, but his numbers are pretty good. But they closed at 9-2. His numbers in that stretch, 2,941 yards, 23 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 96.5 passer rating, really good air yards per attempt. He ran for 273 yards and 7 touchdowns in that stretch. And prorated, that would have been 4,166 yards, 33 touchdowns. He would have had 10 picks. But Trevor played so well down the stretch last year. He was one of the best quarterbacks in the sport. I kind of am, so I'm putting the Jags and Bears in a similar bucket of, if they regress, it's incredibly obvious to see that it was coming. There are so many regression things pointing to both these teams. The Jaguars won, the Bears won. People talk about the 1-score games, and the defense isn't very good, so it could be even worse than it was last year. So the Bears one's obvious. The Jags one, I don't think people are talking about as much, because I think people just don't talk about the Jags compared to the Bears, which is what Liam Cohen said. Liam Cohen said he puts on NFL.com and all he sees is Caleb Williams 100 times. And they asked Chicago about it, and Ben Johnson gave a psycho answer back. So Ben Johnson, Liam Cohen rivalry, cross conference is fun there. But for the Jags, they were so turnover dependent last year. They forced so many turnovers on defense. Anthony Campanile did a great job as a defensive coordinator, and I would say it's awesome for them that he didn't get a head coaching job. They kept him. He's putting another year in work there, but you can't really repeat what they did on defense in terms of the forcing of the turnovers, and you lost maybe your best defensive player in Devin at linebacker, who I love. I overrate probably to a certain degree, but I think he tied together that. Josh Hines-Allen's better than him, actually. He's not the best defensive player. Josh Allen's definitely better, but I think he was kind of the linchpin of that, tying it all together, and I think they're going to miss him a lot. But similar to Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams and me fully buying and believing in that pair to kind of beat any of the regression odds, I feel the same way about Trevor and Liam Cohen. I think that Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence are one of the best head coach quarterback duos in the league that I would bet on going forward. And despite the fact that I think this team lacks a ton of blue chip talent, I think you feel really good about a lot of spots with Jacksonville. I think you feel like you're average to above average almost everywhere. But I don't know if you feel like you're top 5-ish anywhere. besides maybe Josh Hines-Allen at edge. You know, if Trevor Lawrence has a great year, you could argue that or something. But you feel like you have a lot of the 10th to 15th best players at the position playing for the Jags. I don't know if you'd agree with that, but
what about blue chip cornerback Travis Hunter and also blue chip wide receiver Travis Hunter?
The funny thing about blue chip wide receiver Travis Hunter, they have a lot of mouths to feed all of a sudden in this offense in Jacksonville. They have Parker Washington, Jacoby Myers, and Brian Thomas Jr., all three guys who I think are very legitimate wide receivers. Brian Thomas Jr. is a weird situation. He was 1,600 yards or whatever 2 years ago, and last year he was invisible, and everybody on the team seemed to hate him. Allegedly, he was pretty hurt last year, and he looks a lot better this year, but then there's also
amazing how often people come out in the offseason. He's like, oh, yeah, I was hurt. That's why I was bad.
Yeah. But there's also some reports that I think Jacksonville is still kind of annoyed with him and leaning towards Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington as the top two receivers and him kind of being the third guy. But that's still, whoever the third guy is of those three, that's a pretty good third guy. So I think all three of those guys are pretty good. Brenton Strange, who Liam Cohen said is going to lead the team in targets, which if that happens, what are we doing? But they also drafted 3 tight ends. So they have 4 tight ends. I don't know what they're doing. But the Jags, like Chicago, I have a lot of questions about the roster, a lot of issues with the roster, but I'm treating them as a fringe Super Bowl contender. So I have them winning the South. I have them I gave them 12 wins. So 1 less than last year, but 1 more than Houston.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's roll on to our last team in the division, the Tennessee Titans, who are one of the stupidest organizations in the sport. They go 3-14 last year, which is the same. So they go 3-14 2 years ago, and they decide to keep the unqualified head coach that led them to 3-14. To then fire him 6 games into Cam Ward's rookie season, essentially making Cam Ward's entire rookie season a wash because they wouldn't just get rid of Brian Callahan last offseason. Just great management stuff there for your rookie quarterback. They lose Chigakonkwo, Lloyd Cushenberry, Kevin Zeitler, Tavondre Sweat, and Sebastian Joseph Day. They bring in Robert Saleh to be the head coach with Brian Daboll and Gus Bradley as his OC and DC respectively. They bring in Wan'Dale Robinson, edge rusher Jermaine Johnson, defensive lineman John Franklin Myers. They bring in Alante Taylor. It's all about Cam Ward this year. He flashed as a rookie at times behind a bad supporting cast. So does this roster overhaul and coaching staff overhaul give him a real shot in year 2? And how fast can Saleh install his system? This is an entirely new staff. Brian Daboll has looked good at times as an OC, but looked just outmatched as a head coach. And then Tennessee has the NFL's best rest and preparation situation this year. They have 0 games with a rest disadvantage. And so maybe that could help them steal some wins, but they're about middle of the pack, 16th easiest schedule, 10th in rest differential at plus 6 days. Their over-under win total is at 6.5. Mark, how do you feel about the Titans?
You know, part of why the Titans don't have rest differential?
Because they don't get primetime games.
They don't have a single primetime game.
Yeah.
I wanted to look it up. Is every game 1 o'clock this year? Let me look it up. I'm the first 8 are. No, they have a 4:05 November 29.
Who do they play? They must play somebody good.
At Jacksonville.
Not really.
And they're pretty good. They won 13 games. You just did it. You just did it, Shane. You just disrespected the 13-win Jags.
They've got a 4:05 game on December 27th against the Raiders.
They're not very good.
Granted, that's because the NFL has 8 games on Christmas now. So there's not many to choose from on the 27th, but still.
Yeah, that's hilarious. 15 1 o'clock games for the Tennessee, the 1 o'clock Titans.
Yeah.
That's pretty hilarious. I think that says it all about the Titans. I'm actually kind of high on, this is a dumb thing to say. I'm high on Tony Pollard for fantasy this year. I think Daboll is going to get Tony Pollard a lot of touches. They're saying they want to use him in the pass game a lot. And also, they kind of have some options in the passing game now for Cam Ward. There's a few less excuses for Cam Ward this year, I will say, and he looks atrocious so far. I don't know if you've seen any of the clips out there from the preseason, but he still looks the same as last year. I know I think he's targeted Carnell Tate 4 or 5 times and hasn't come close really. But you you have some pieces around you now. At running back, you've got Pollard and Spears. I think that's like a fine running back room. At receiver, you've got Carnell Tate, who we both argued was a good pick for them to make, and that you kind of needed to make a pick like that to help Cam Ward. And Wan'Dale Robinson, they went out and paid him probably too much money, but he's a Daboll guy, and he's a good slot receiver, whatever. Like, he's something to help Cam Ward. And then you still have Calvin Ridley and Chimere Dike as number 3 and 4 receivers, who I think are NFL receivers if they're not great or anything. But even your O-line, you've got a couple guys. You just paid Peter Skoronski. You've got a couple guys in your O-line who aren't terrible. There's like you said, Brian Daboll's had moments as a play caller. We're not talking Brian Callahan anymore. Not that he hasn't had moments, but I think that this is going to be the year where it's like, man, maybe Cam Ward actually does just stink too. Because I think that's where we're at. I think that he has less excuses, and I think he's going to need all the excuses he can get, because I think he's going to be rough. And then that's not even getting into, Robert Saleh and the defensive side of the ball, and, the fact that Amy Adams Strunk is addicted to hiring bald people. It's a mess. They're the bald 1 o'clock Titans. Do you know about this, Shane?
No.
Look up on Twitter. Here, I'm going to search it too and see what comes up. Just look up bald Tennessee Titans.
Okay.
All of their coaches that they hired are all bald. They hired like an all balding. I'm not getting anything when I search this on Twitter.
Okay.
Twitter search.
I got it. Yeah. The Titans are building a bald super team.
Yeah. Brian Daboll's bald. Robert Saleh's bald. I think they're the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator they hired under Saleh's bald. Bunch of bald position coaches. It's out of control. Cam Ward's going to struggle the first couple weeks, and to try to make up with his coaches, he's going to come in bald the next game.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
I have to
there
run
it
up
is
on the screen for our video watchers.
Oh, who's the bottom right guy? He looks familiar to me.
I don't know.
Oh man, who is? I'm going to look that up. The Titans staff.
Yeah.
Where are you at on I'm assuming you're also under on the Titans.
Yeah, I don't think this is going to be a very good football team. I have a hard time seeing it. I'm not a huge Cam Ward believer. I'm not totally out on Cam Ward, but I'm not going to judge a guy by what he had to deal with his rookie season. But I wasn't tremendously high on him to begin with. I think he showed a few flashes, but yeah, I thought Saleh's an uninspiring hire. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, at least I do like that they at least got Carnell Tate, and maybe that gives Ward something to work with. But this is a team I would take the under on. Yeah,
top right is Gus Bradley, by the way, for the people out there who remember Gus Bradley. But this is a dumb thing. Little nepotism thing I just noticed looking at the Titans coaching staff. Ahmad Saleh is defensive backs assistant. So that's a brother of Robert Saleh. And then also the linebackers coach is Dave Borgonzi, who is the brother of general manager of the Titans, Mike Borgonzi. So interesting stuff going on.
Yeah. Well, if you're going to be a bad football team, you might as well hire your relatives.
Why not? Hey, have them around.
Yeah. They call it generational wealth for a reason, Mark. All right. Well, that is going to about do it for us, I think, for this episode previewing the South. Mark, before we get out of here, do you have any final thoughts for the people?
Ooh, wait. I have to have a good final thought.
Here, I'll buy you a second. Yako said the Titans starting offense got embarrassed by Seattle's second string defense. I couldn't speak too much to that because I find it hard enough to get through Eagles preseason games, much less the whole league preseason games. But
final thought for Shane, real quick, before I jump in. Give me a take from Eagles preseason. You're grinding the film. Give me a take.
Let's see.
Maybe a player that's popped to you.
You know, they almost just in last year we saw the Eagles play an interior O-line we all knew was hurt, and we argued they should have sat those guys and played some of the guys behind them. It's going to be a lot easier to do this year if that same situation presents itself, because the Eagles' backup offensive line looks so good. Markel Bell has looked really good out at right tackle. Willie Lampkin has looked good. Drew Kendall has looked good. So I think the Eagles have a backup guard, center, and tackle that obviously it's a big difference going against starters than going against second and third string guys. But I've been really impressed by watching the offensive line play in these games. And Will Shipley's looked good too. Will Shipley's hit on some nice runs. So of course that he's got some guys paving the way for him, and that's part of that O-line looking good. But I've been impressed by the offensive line depth.
There you go. That's a good take. I love hearing that. Markel Bell. That's a pick that I didn't love, but I totally understood like the vision on. So hopefully it's good that it's panning out so quickly. I'll give a take that the Eagles fans won't want to hear. This is a fantasy take, and it's a guy who I was probably a little lower on consensus at the beginning of the fantasy process. And the more I look at the numbers, the more I dive into the stuff, each day and each week that goes by, I fall more in love with AJ Brown for fantasy. Sadly, and I think part of it.
I thought you were about to slander Devontae Smith, and I was about to go to war.
No. I think part of the conversation that bugs me with AJ Brown for fantasy purposes and statistically, and even just overall when people talk about how he was last year, he finished in fantasy as the number 10 wide receiver. We were talking about it like we were like putting him in jail and like he didn't get any opportunities.
Well, to be fair, he was talking about it.
I know. And he influences the way that he's talked about by everybody else. But I feel like if you ask people, what number receiver do you think AJ Brown finished as statistically last year? People don't think he finished as a top 10 receiver or even top 15. I don't think, or top 20. Like, I think people would have guessed like, oh, was he 22 or like wide receiver 25 or how were his stats? I don't think people really realize that he finished with 78 catches, 1,003 yards, and 7 touchdowns. And he had 121 targets to his point. That's low. He's going to get more than that. You look at kind of the other guys, you look at a guy like, even Nico Collins got 120. It's not like he got one less than him. I think AJ's probably going to be in that 140, 150 number. They throw more in New England. They're not going to run the ball the way we do in Philly. They also just run more plays. We kind of do the grinded out game a little bit more than they do. They go more up tempo. I think AJ Brown's going to have a huge year. I have him as my wide receiver 7. I've vaulted him up, I think, to 15 or 16 overall on my personal big board. So if you're sitting in the late second round or maybe even early third round, if you're in the Eagles draft and he went a little later, I think he's ranked 28th on ESPN. So AJ Brown, really, really good fantasy value, sadly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's Yakko said AJ's still good, but was just checked out. He either scored 5 or 20 points on any given week. It wasn't total production; it was bursty, and that's it. I fully expect him. I think
you're going to find that that's. I'm sorry. I think you're going to find that that's kind of common with receivers that aren't like Puka, JSN, like the top 4 or 5 guys. If you're right outside of that number, you're going to get a lot of that sometimes just by game flow. Sorry.
Yeah, I expect AJ to have a great year this year. Check back with me in November of next year when the Patriots are like 9-2 and he's pouting because he's not getting enough targets or something. That's the true test. Year 1 with AJ is never going to be the issue.
Nobody is more annoyed at AJ than me for not being fine with winning enough. I mean, just Jalen, I've said the number a million times. I don't know what it ended up being, Jalen and AJ together. I know Jalen's 48-15 over the last 4 years. In the regular season, we literally couldn't have won more, than we did basically over AJ's run as an Eagle. Wasn't enough for him. Drake May had the quote where he said, "It's not my job to keep receivers happy. It's my job to win games." I have news for you, Drake. Your job changed.
Yes.
That's not your job anymore. Your job is to keep AJ happy also and win. But I think that I just want to push back. I think that I've seen some people out there kind of say that AJ's washed, or I don't think AJ's washed at all. Sadly, I think he's still really, really good. Maybe he's not top 3 to 5 that I think he was a couple of years ago. I think he's still very much top 7 to 10.
Yeah. Well, speaking of receivers, the terms here are now out on the Kayshon Boutte trade. The Patriots got safety Jalen Reed and a 2028 7th rounder. So not even a 27 7th rounder, Mark. It's a 2028 7th rounder.
Yeah. I actually like Boutte. I think that's a nice, that's fine. Good for Houston.
Yeah, good job by the Texans there. So that's going to do it. Thank you guys for joining us for episode number 241 of Chalk Talk. If you enjoy what you heard on the show, and we know that you do, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next episode. Next week, we'll be previewing the NFC and AFC West. The following week, we'll be doing our annual awards draft. And the following week, Mark, we will be recapping and overreacting to week 1 of the NFL season. I can't wait. Smash that subscribe button. Drop us a 5-star rating wherever you stream your podcast. You can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Shane Half NFL. He is at Mark Henry Jr. NFL. And we will catch you guys next time.